And here we have the triptych. It's the only one he's ever done. And he happened to write his thoughts on each painting. The failures, the successes, the inner vision of our pursuits. I had this one framed upside down until I realized that the logo is on the bottom. It happens. Here we have Voyager, which is one of my favorites. The world of the inner self, voyaging in thought, in dream, in far-off places. Now, these are very small. They're not much larger than here that we have the Gatsby print. And hope, an extension of the subconscious where through utter despair the worlds of the mind seek the light beyond the darkness. How are we doing with time?
We are doing very good.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes.
Oh, 10? Okay. It's okay.
Is that good?
Well, this is Mildred, Gus, and Walter. Walter, the poet, the lecturer, and one of the groupies. Diane, you remember Walter?
I remember him very well.
Oh, okay. My parents had a circle of friends that we called their groupies. Writers and poets and journalists and musicians and people off the street and admirers and fans. Once they met Mildred and Gus, that was it. No matter where they lived, they lived in other states, they'd always come and say hi and visit. Now, one or two, maybe a few more, Bruce thought and believed and called him Gus and Mildred's fellow travelers, the communists, because a lot of the people who were in that intellectual realm at that time were more towards the left than they were conservative. In the late 80s, not long before Dad passed away, his paintings were going for the thousands. He had several paintings, as I said, that were commissioned. He'd recreate a painting that he had, and he wouldn't sell the original. So he painted another one for the customer. These are prints. They're photo prints. And they were processed in an old-fashioned lab. And some of them were huge. The largest printers you have ever seen, 30 by 40 by 45. And Dad would go to the lab, and I went with him, and he had professional photographers photograph the paintings, and the lab would pull out the painting for Dad to review. The color wasn't good, it had to be redone. If there were little spots or dots in them, it had to be redone. So when they were finally done, various sizes, Dad would hand sign them, even though there was the logo was within the photograph. So he'd hand sign them and sell them, and they were very, very popular. In 2015, we were privileged to have an exhibit at this prestigious Bugatti Art Deco museum. Does anyone know where Oxnard, California is? Oh, you do? Okay. I think a lot of insurance companies are there. And the museum is owned and founded by Peter Mullen. And both Peter and the museum director were in awe of the Kaitz collection. Here we have the main entrance of the museum. Now, Peter Mullen owns these Bugattis, except for a few that might have been on loan. And he has other museums as well. But this was his favorite museum. And on the mezzanine floor, oh, maybe we should just read this a minute, I'm sorry. This is what Peter Mullen had to say, and he's an artist as well. There were a countless number of wonderful artists from the Art Deco era, but few can compare with Gustave Kaitz and his thought-provoking, awe-inspiring works. Kaitz not only shared his unique perspective with the world in the time of the era, but he also helped reignite widespread appreciation for the period among future generations. And coming from Peter, that was something. Now, the exhibit was on the mezzanine of this magnificent museum. And here we have American Opus. The museum asked on that easel if they could have it on loan. And they have American Opus on loan, which Dad painted in '85 as an expression, pardon me, of empathy and hope for Native Americans. Now, the professional museum, the experts who set this up did an amazing, amazing job. Besides the two board men here, each picture, that was Bruce, and this guy's waiting for his wife. I don't know, looks posed there. So each picture had a title and a little blog about them and writing, and it was absolutely magnificent. And Ava was able to come with us, and so was my brother's niece had met us there. She lives in, where does she live in? Yeah, Santa Barbara, and it was exciting. This is only one of the magnificent Art Deco pieces at the museum. Wherever you went, there were Art Deco Bugatti pieces and Art Nouveau, but the director sent me this last week because I asked her for something. And here is another room, and it goes along a little differently, and they had a display with Dad's paints and pencils, and they had books, and you can't see it because the photographer cut it off. Now here, this was Bruce's favorite thing. There were only two of these Bugattis in existence. Peter Mullen owns one, and Ralph Lauren owns the other. They were $34 million. 35. What's a million? 35. And this was Bruce's favorite item. I thought, and this was my favorite item. The photographer. So, before the exhibit, Peter had journalists call because he had articles being written, pieces in different newspapers and magazines in California, in Los Angeles actually. And a journalist from Los Angeles called and asked me, what makes Gustave's paintings stand out from other artists of the era? I had to explain to him not only about other artists, but about the artist. And Martin, maybe you'll see. You tell me if it's true or not. Paintings reveal the artist, the excitements, the sorrows, the passions, the heartbreaks, disappointments, the despair, and the eternal hope for new tomorrows. Gustave's paintings are tapestries of the innermost reflections of his being. He believes society needs fantasy. Reality is cruel. People seek a way out. The Deco movement was a way to fantasize. He was drawn into the fantasy through his art with ultimate consciousness and perspective. Dad and I went to photograph some of the works in 1992, just a few months before he passed away. And the photographer who took the pictures of the works took this out in the yard. And this was the legacy that was left to me. And thank you. Are we good with time?